Live now, or what's going on?
I'm starting the broadcast now, but I'm just going to double check on the thing that it's streaming. So it should be starting now, but let me double check. Okay, I've got it. Okay, yeah, we're streaming.
Yeah, this is
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Purple Tories, the leading broadcast show for Tories, of course. Today on my show, I've joined with me is someone called Zack Boseley. Here's someone I first came across when I first started flirting with Toryism after my stint at UKIP. And what I liked about you, Zack, is I think you just came across as very to the point and straightforward. Sure. There's a lot of cynicism with kippers, especially around the Conservatives. And I find it is hard for them to get past this prejudice of, what the Conservative Party is about. So why don't you just start by introducing yourself and telling me how you got involved in the Conservative Party?
Yeah, well, I guess it kind of, I remember political week around 2016, like a lot of people. There was a referendum going on, and I was trying to get educate myself a bit more about, economics and that kind of stuff, because it's kind of get a bit gap in my knowledge. And from that, I kind of naturally came to the Conservatives because they were the party that kind of spoke to the values that I kind of adopted from that.
So what did you study at university?
I did evolutionary biology.
Okay.
And from that, I guess I don't really fit in that much at uni because everyone's there as a leftist, as we all know.
Yeah.
And it was like I wasn't conservative yet, but I was like, I knew I didn't fit in with them, with that crowd. And I guess doing evolution in biology kind of makes you a bit immune and impervious to the general leftist narrative.
Well, that's
especially
that's what Jordan Peterson says, doesn't he? That the STEM subjects are the last fields to go as far as political correctness and all that kind of thing.
Sure. I mean, there was some there. It was trying to steep it through in, but once you got got background in science and especially biology. I think there's only so far left you can go after that. So I guess seeing those contradictions with the whole narrative made me question, well, how much some of it's clear bollocks, like how much else is. So it's like, okay, I've got to question everything now, and from that, start trying to back up your beliefs with facts, and eventually you end up coming to the right.
So were you a leftist before?
I would never call myself a leftist. I was probably more of a classical liberal.
Okay.
That's what I call myself, yeah, but I didn't really know what that meant until, got a little bit older and started actually learn some stuff.
Okay, so you went through university and you sort of moved to the right. I saw on your Facebook profile actually that there was a picture of you supporting the Brexit Party at one point. So that
was during the European elections, because I joined the Conservative Party in maybe about 2016, 2017, around then. I kind of I can't get delusions with it because after Theresa May came up with the Chequers deal, and just I was a bit disappointed because it wasn't really what we voted for. I want a proper Brexit, like most people who voted for Leave.
Yeah, so you're not dogmatically behind the Conservative Party. People couldn't accuse you of being that. You do. You put your morals and priorities first. It's not all about the party, is it?
Yeah, it's about principles at the end of the day. It's about the party which most conform to your principles. I mean, no one's perfect. It's not going to align perfectly.
Because that's the main criticism, I think, of the Conservative Party is that the politicians generally put the party before the country, which I can understand that being true in the past, but I think that's changing more and more, especially under Boris.
Yeah. What kind of criticisms were they saying about putting the party before the country?
Well, Brexit being the main example, I guess, the fact that most Tories didn't want Brexit to begin with, and now the window has changed. I don't know, and you've got more people like Jacob Rees-Mogg and Priti Patel becoming more prominent within the party now. So that's how I would say it's changed. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. There's always been different factions within the Conservative Party anyway. You've always had the pro-Europeans. You've had the John Majors. Then you've had the Thatchers. And they've always kind of been kind of loggerheads with each other.
Yeah, I found it funny actually. I was listening to Jess Phillips on The Spectator, someone talking about her, and she says if Brexit happens, she intends to become the Bill Cash of Remainers and just be doggedly, supporting Remain, even though we're like far out of the EU.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing people don't seem to remember, the fact that these Tories, the old Tories, they were the ones that kept us out of the euro. They've been fighting for us for decades before Brexit came along.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, there's a lot of cooks in the Conservative Party, but there are still people there who are who are worth the time.
Exactly. I mean, for so long, I've slated the Conservative Party.
It's easy to do.
It's easy to do, yeah.
It's easy.
Because of the fact that they've been quite pro-Remain in the past, and things like immigration and hate speech laws and things like that. But I feel like I'm one of the people who's actually noticed that there is a change going on in the Conservative Party. This isn't the old days of David Cameron and Theresa May. And I do get what you're saying about if you go before to the days of Thatcher and before times like that in the Conservative Party was actually conservative in a big way. And it's sort of drifted from that in time as we've gone along. But I feel like the Conservative Party is going back to that now. It's going back to where it originally started and came from.
Yeah, I mean, Conservative Party is ultimately there to win seats, really. I mean, like, there will be anything they need to be just to be in power. So if people naturally shift that way, which is what the Brexit Party knew before, really, they're to shift the Conservative Party to the right.
Right. So what you're saying is something that a lot of people I know will enjoy you saying that
it's just true.
They'll do what it takes to win, right? But there isn't anything wrong with that, I think, as long as it's what the public wants, right? And as far as I'm aware, go on.
It will always be a Conservative Party or the Labour Party in power. That's the way the system is. So your choices are either to back a party, further to the right and hope you make a difference, or you can back the Conservatives and try and make the change from inside. Ultimately, it's going to be Conservatives who make the change that you want anyway.
Exactly. And the parallel I always go by is the Trump phenomenon, right? Trump, he briefly had a stint with the Libertarian Party a couple decades ago, and he didn't run with them eventually because he decided it wasn't worthwhile. And he realized that to create real change, you had to work with the Republicans, and he did. And he's totally transformed the Republicans and brought them back to their roots, I think, as well, which is proper conservatism.
Yeah, I mean, the party like from Trump to Romney, it's like a totally different beast now.
Exactly. Yeah. So Trump has proven that you can change a big party like the Republicans and the Conservatives as well, and you can move them in a direction which is, I believe, better for the country.
Well, we've seen it happen. We've seen it with Labour. They've been taken over by momentum. Like, it can happen. You can have different shifts within the party. Yeah.
So do you think there's a bit of a right-wing momentum in the Conservative Party, or what would you say about that?
I don't know, because the Tory Party are kind of a bit slightly more immune to intrusism than the Labour Party are.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know, because we've got a lot of people since Boris has become leader. We've got a lot more people joining. People just seem to be like more enthused with the direction the party's actually going in. Which, if you're a parliamentarian, that's what you want to be capitalised on, really.
Exactly. Well, I've noticed, actually, I feel like the hardcore purists who have joined the Brexit Party and things like that, they will always have issues with the Conservatives, I think. But when I see the average people on the street, whether they're a mechanic or a builder or people like that, they actually say, "Oh, I actually like what Boris is doing, and I'll probably vote for them, even if I haven't voted for them in the past." And that's the main battle, isn't it? It's just to get the public on side.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Conservatives the vehicle to do that, because fundamentally they're aiming for, they're not going extreme right wing, and it might be what we want, but we are getting votes. Yeah.
Although your name does suspiciously sound close to Oswald Mosley, you have to admit.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Anyway, no comment.
no relation, honestly.
Yeah. So why don't we? So I know we have a lot of kippers and ex-kippers who watch the show. So, and I know they have many problems with Boris's deal. So why don't we go into Boris's deal and hopefully explain why that it isn't a total pile of trash, because I honestly don't believe it is a bad deal at all. I think it's a decent deal.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's good enough.
Yeah.
And
So what are your initial thoughts on that deal?
I don't know. I don't know. A bit of criticising it, but like I don't seem to understand what they expect really. We went through a period where Theresa May basically capitulated on everything.
Yeah.
And the EU had pretty much everything they wanted with this, well, basically Theresa May's deal, which was, what was it called? The worst deal in history. That was what it was called, something like.
I don't know, surrender deal.
Yeah, something like that. And yeah, it was pretty bad. Obviously, it got defeated 3 times. Like, popularity in the country is not exactly great on it. But then Boris came along and just decided to, reopen things, which couldn't, they said it couldn't be done. They didn't really have any reason to renegotiate with us because they already had everything they wanted. And then he's managed to get rid of the backstop, which is, I think most people can agree the backstop was the worst part of Theresa May's deal.
Yeah.
So now we're in a separate customs union. We'll actually leave the European customs union. We'll be outside of the single market, but we'll still have tariff-free access with it. So we'll still be able to sign free trade deals, and we'll still have access to the single market, which is isn't that the best of both worlds, really?
Exactly. Yeah, because in an ideal world, you would scrap the Theresa May deal altogether and just start again, right?
Absolutely, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, the EU would never have agreed to that. So Boris thought pragmatically, and was able to go back to the EU and renegotiate it in a better way, in which they would actually at least come to the table, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a whole debate, really. It's idealism versus pragmatism. It's like, okay, people can come on Facebook or whatever, and they can start complaining about the deal and say it's not the ideal deal and all the flaws of it. That's easy to do. But what's difficult to do is actually to actually play the game, to actually exist within what's actually possible, and actually try and make a change. That's the difficult thing.
And what would you say to the people who would say, yeah, but you could just not negotiate with them whatsoever and just literally just go out with a no deal, like repeal the amendment or whatever that keeps us in the EU, and then just balls to the wall, leave the EU, no deal?
I'm not against that. But how is it possible? Under the last parliament, it was not possible at all. No deal was blocked consistently.
Yeah, and I was very surprised when it happened that Boris had to sign a letter to the EU to ask for an extension. To be totally honest with you, I did not know that Parliament had the power to control the Prime Minister to write a letter. That seems ridiculous to me. But
it's crazy. But they've got a situation now where the Prime Minister doesn't really have much control over the parties, really, because of Brexit. Everyone seems to just defy whips, and they hold allegiance to the EU over allegiance to their own country and their own party, which is why they need to be voted out.
Yeah, exactly. But the point you're saying, which I definitely agree with, is I don't think you could just go out with no deal like that, because Parliament would get in the way of that. It wouldn't be possible. And also, I think no deal does sound great and everything, but there are benefits to going smoothly into a free trade agreement, because it will cause disruption, a no deal, to the economy, and there will be negatives.
There's no doubt about that. There will be short-term economic consequences to it. Of course, there will be.
So it is, it's fair enough for people to go, oh yeah, no deal, we'll be out and everything will be fine and dandy, but it would be trouble as well. It wouldn't be all roses and daisies.
No, long term, we'd probably be fine. We'd be fine with it. But then in the short term, it will have a big effect, and people will lose their jobs.
Yeah. Okay, so going into Boris's deal, you've already mentioned that Boris has said we're leaving the single market and the customs union.
Yeah.
I've tried to read both sides on this in terms of analysis, the people who are against it and for it. And so I read Spike's article today saying why this deal is rubbish, and also read a piece from Lawyers for Britain about why it is a tolerable price for freedom. I think they quoted as saying it as. So the Spiked analysis, from what I can see, which is Brendan and Neil's media company, they basically said, well, actually it's crap, because we're going to be in we're going to have to stick by all the EU's rules during the withdrawal process. And they also said the people who are going to arbitrate this deal is going to be subject to rulings by the ECG. And to be fair to them, I think they're totally right there. I think the worst part about this withdrawal agreement is the ECJ being able to rule over us in terms of the agreement.
I was under the impression that we could overrule them. We still have to accept the rulings, but we could still come back to UK and we could say, okay, we don't disagree with this, we can overrule you.
Is that right? Because I didn't know that, honestly.
I think so. Someone can fact check me on this.
But as far as I'm aware, so I've read that. I've read the Lawyers for Britain piece, and the Lawyers for Britain piece is really interesting, very to the point. And it's written by some of the top lawyers who support Brexit. And they basically said that, like you said, we'd be out of the customs union, we'd be out of the single market, and we can basically undo a lot of what's been negotiated by Theresa May after the withdrawal process. And
yeah,
so
this is just the withdrawal agreement. Like the real deal is actually to be negotiated when, after the withdrawal agreement's passed, we start negotiating trade and all these things. That's the important one, which we've not got to yet.
Exactly. So, everything bad that Theresa May has put in this deal can be undone after the withdrawal process.
Yeah. Even the bits that can't, it's still a horrible price to pay for the benefits we will get because of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Because the fact that we're out of the single market and the customs union, the backstop's being removed, these are some of the main issues. And if we can get those done and at the same time have a free trade agreement with the EU, we're getting the best of both worlds there. And this isn't to say it isn't a proper Brexit, because it is a proper Brexit. It's just there are certain caveats, but we can undo those as we go into the future.
It was always going to be the case. It wasn't going to be a perfect deal. People would have to compromise. That's how deals work.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we could leave the European Union, we could sort the trade agreement out. We could have tariff access to the single market. We could still have a trade deal with the EU, and then we could sign a trade deal with America, and we'd be in such a good position after that. Like every price we have to pay for that is, I think it's pretty tolerable.
Definitely. Let me read a few things from this article, actually, because it is a good article. The article is called "This Flawed Deal is a Tolerable Price to Pay for Our Freedom," and it's by Martin Howe, QC. So it says here, first, the positives. Boris Johnson's deal unveiled on Thursday is miles better than Theresa May's ghastly capitulation. So they're not saying that it's all fine and dandy. So first, the Northern Ireland backstop protocol in the withdrawal agreement has been modified to remove Great Britain from being locked into a vassal state customs union with the EU until the EU chooses to release us. Secondly, the political declaration which sets out the future EU-UK relationship has been amended so that it foreshadows a free trade agreement under which the UK will be able to operate its independent trade policy instead of being locked into the EU's external customs tariff. Mm-hmm. Thirdly, references in the PD to the UK aligning its rules to EU rules have been deleted. See, I wasn't sure about this before, because I heard Farage making some noises on LBC saying that we'd have to be aligned to the EU on a lot of different things. But it's saying here that
it's not just like a single clause in the deal, though. It's saying like the EU and UK agree to, not have what was the word? It was something kind of like an extra competitive advantage or something like that. We agree to be like, have the same level playing field.
Yeah, well, actually, it goes into that after this. It says, fourthly, the so-called level playing field commitments in the PD have been changed. The previous commitment to shadow the EU rules on competition and state aids in Theresa May's WA withdrawal agreement has been replaced with a more open-ended commitment not to distort competition. And just to say the last thing here, fifthly, an important change has been made to the defence cooperation clauses, explicitly making clear the right of the UK to determine how it will respond to any invitation by the EU to participate in joint action in the defensive field. So,
in other words, no EU army.
Exactly. Because I think I've even heard from Richard Brain, who obviously we had on the last stream, saying that we're still subject to rules to do with the EU army. Like somehow they're going to drag us into their EU army project. But from what it's saying here, it doesn't, as far as I can see.
Yeah. I mean, some of the people may disagree. Maybe I know things that I don't, but that's what seems to be the wording.
Well, I've just seen some comments here actually about PESCO. I don't know if you're very aware of PESCO.
No, sorry.
Yeah.
Is this a UKIP thing?
No, it's like a cooperation agreement of some sort to do with the militaries, but okay. I'll leave that one for another stream. But so the basic point I'm trying to get across is this deal, it isn't perfect, but it's good enough, and it will get us over the line. And once we're over the line, we can do whatever we need to do. We will be free if we want to be free.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So post the Brexit deal, do you think Boris Johnson will continue this trajectory and, try and make us as free as possible from the EU and benefit ourselves in terms of trade and everything?
Well, look, I mean, just go back his record. Like, he did this deal. I think he's earned our trust because of it. I mean, he was one of the players that actually got us out of the European Union anyway. And I think do you remember when he was Foreign Secretary, when he had to resign because of Theresa May's deal? That showed some integrity, surely.
Exactly, yeah.
And the fact, he's got into power and he's filled his cabinet with people who are hardline leavers.
And people forget as well that when he was a journalist, he wrote plenty of Eurosceptic articles about the things wrong with the EU and his problems with it. So it's not like he's just suddenly jumped on the bandwagon as let's support Brexit so he can become Prime Minister.
Yeah. And if not, he's also got the Brexit Party as well to get at his heels as well. So he has to still remain like a hard Eurosceptic.
Yeah.
Otherwise he's going to lose votes to the Brexit Party.
Well, yeah, and I don't actually slate Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party very often, because I do think they're doing a good job, like you say.
They need to exist, but I'm glad Farage has stepped down actually in a lot of the Tory seats, because when he announced he was going to be running in all the seats, it was like, what are you doing? You could potentially sacrifice a Conservative majority, and then without a Conservative majority, there's no Brexit really. So it's kind of an ironic situation where the Brexit Party could stop Brexit.
Yeah. Well, I was very surprised at that, actually. I always hoped Farage would do that. And it just shows that he does actually put principle before party.
Mm-hmm. I think, but yeah, Farage has been a bit weird, I found, since Boris has become Prime Minister. It seems like he cannot ever give Boris a break. He's always slating everything he does.
Well, the thing is, he started the Brexit Party during Theresa May's reign as Prime Minister, and it was a completely different level of field then. And so him existing on the political spectrum like that made total sense. And it made total sense for him to slate Theresa May, because what she was doing was complete capitulation. But I think the last weapon the Conservative Party had against, the UKIP wave and Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party and this kind of movement is Boris Johnson, because he is the one that wins these people over. And so for that to happen, that kind of put Nigel Farage in a bit of an awkward place, because he knew he was up against someone who, believes in a lot of what he believes in. Yeah,
Farage got Boris to be Prime Minister at the end of the day.
Basically,
yeah, it's because of him. The Party was so much pressure because of the Brexit Party. They had to have Boris in, because he's the only one that could actually deliver Brexit, and the only one that could actually win a general election against Jeremy Corbyn, given what the state of the polls were like at the time.
Yeah. And I remember Jacob Rees-Mogg saying on a show once that one of the big things about Boris Johnson is that he makes people smile. He actually engages people and makes them enthusiastic about politics, and very few politicians can actually do that.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good quality to have in politics.
Okay, so Boris's deal, we've covered that.
Yes.
The Conservative Party in general, are you very active in your branch, and what's your history with that?
Recently, I do a lot of stuff online, as you know.
Yeah.
But I've campaigned. Well, I plan to campaign with in this area, in the area I'm in at the moment. So probably next week I'll be doing that, going out and delivering leaflets and door to door, that kind of thing. Other than that, though, not a huge amount.
Yeah, and you live in Leeds, right?
I do, yeah, which is a Labour stronghold, like a lot of big cities.
So you've got a lot of work on your work to get involved with there. Let's face it.
I'm not changing the Leeds Central. It's going to remain Labour, unfortunately, no matter what I do. But there's a lot of Tory areas around here, a lot of marginals which could flip Tory. So that's what we're working to.
What do you think of what Farage said when he said there's lots of places, especially up north, that there's no way they'll ever vote Tory there, and that the Brexit Party will be the ones to swing them?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, where I'm from Durham, and that's pretty much what he's talking about. Like, people there will never vote Tory. It'll never be a Tory seat. But it's a very strong Leave area, and we've got an MP who's Labour, and she's consistently voted against Brexit every single vote. And so I do think there's a lot of ground to be gained from to the Brexit Party for that. If you see the polls there as well, that Labour are down about 23% or something. It's quite significant.
Well, I won't pretend to be an expert on the North or anything, because I'm clearly not. But I did read an interesting article recently from the Grimsby local newspaper, and it said apparently the Boris is up in Grimsby, and that he'll actually take the Grimsby seat over the Brexit Party. So clearly there is some movement there where people who have historically voted Labour can move to the Conservatives. Yeah,
it's an interesting phenomenon right now, because you've got Labour seats which you'd never think would go Conservative because of the Brexit vote, and now voting Conservative.
Yeah,
I think it's also due to the fact how Labour have consistently gone against Brexit, and they basically essentially betrayed the working class base at this point.
Absolutely. And if you look at the statistics, actually, you'll find that the Conservative is taking on a lot of working class support now. It's almost becoming the party of the working class.
Aren't they more popular than the working class than Labour at the moment?
Yeah, exactly. The Labour, I think, are probably majority middle class now, definitely.
Right. But no, they're the party of the working people, apparently.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I certainly recognise it when I work as an electrician, and I speak to them and they say, oh, yeah, we like what Boris is doing. And it's funny that when I'm working with people in the trade, it's almost uniformly pro-Brexit and pro-Boris Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
The most criticism I'll see is, they'll say, oh, Boris Johnson, he's not the full deal. Like Nigel Farage, he's the full deal. But even that's pretty rare,
Yeah. That's it. I don't see the working class being that socialist, really. It's more the middle classes, like you said.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned socialism there. I feel like conservatism more these days, and the issues which people are more worried about is more social than economic. I feel like immigration, it used to be the number one topic. It's not quite up there so much anymore, but I think immigration is definitely a big factor in how people vote. Do you not think?
Absolutely. Particularly up north, people vote Brexit because of immigration, fundamentally.
Yeah.
In other areas down the south, it's probably not to do with parliamentary sovereignty and that kind of thing, all those arguments. But up north, absolutely, they've been hit pretty badly with immigration.
Yeah, especially places like Bradford.
Yeah. Always places. And it is having a significant impact on them.
So what would you say to the people who say that, Boris won't really do anything about immigration? He's not serious about controlling it.
Well, doesn't Priti Patel say she, is committed to reducing numbers or something, or whatever?
That's not very compelling, Zack. You got to be more compelling than that.
Look, the Tory party don't have a great track record on immigration. Let's be fair.
Yeah,
I mean, they say you've said every election, Theresa May then dropped the promise. Now it's back again. But the thing is now, once Brexit happens, we can now hold a government account and say, okay, you can't blame the European Union anymore. What are you doing to cut immigration? That'll then become a more important issue after Brexit.
Yeah. Well, I think the fact alone that he's hired Priti Patel to be Home Secretary speaks
Isn't
volumes.
she great?
Priti Patel is fantastic. She's probably the most right-wing Tory in the Conservative Party when it comes to, social issues and things like that. I heard she apparently once supported the death penalty at some point as well, but I don't know if she still holds that position. But if anyone's going to reduce immigration, it's going to be Priti Patel, that's for sure.
Yeah, and if that happens, then the Conservative Party's done.
What do you mean the Conservative Party's done?
Well, if it didn't happen after Brexit, when Priti Patel's like Home Secretary, that's just like, when's it going to ever happen?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So she's talked about this in the past. She said at the conference that she's going to bring in the Australian points-based system, which I think is fantastic. That's totally what we need. The problem we have in this country is we have too many low-skilled people coming over, and then sometimes we end up rejecting, doctors and things like that because of the rules. So
I don't see people are like against immigration in terms of like attracting like high skilled people here, people who want to work and contribute to the economy. Like most people, like everyone really is fine with that. But it's just, it's when people say, oh, you don't need to get immigration, you hate immigrants. Like, not really. We just have a problem with people who don't need to be here.
Yeah. And also I find that I've talked about this in the old show, The Kipper Stream, about problems with people coming over from cultures that are very dissimilar to ours, and cultures that don't really integrate as well. And
no, and you can't integrate if you keep having mass immigration. There's no incentive to do that. It's a biological formula as well. If you have more immigration within a certain group, then there's less integration within that group.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to at some point either reduce immigration or just totally, we're not going to shut the borders, but something getting towards that.
Yeah, and I think we've had a particular problem with Islamic Pakistani immigration in particular, where we've just had too many of people coming over, low skilled people, and they just haven't integrated in the same way that French, Greek, or Polish people have, who I think have integrated a lot better. And part of that is to do with numbers, like you say. When you have less people coming in, it's easier for them to integrate. But also, I think we should take a consideration to the culture of the people coming into the country. Also, I personally prefer to have Christian refugees from the Middle East than economic migrants from Libya or somewhere like that, because I think that they're more akin to our culture.
Of course, I mean, there's other places they could go. If they're refugees, they should be seeking asylum within the countries that surround them.
Exactly, that's a good point as well. And
the whole point of refugees is to go back as well when trouble subsides, which I've not seen any evidence for.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I think the Conservatives are serious about reducing immigration. We've had Priti Patel saying she's going to bring in the Australian style points-based system, but she's also said that immigration will go down in the future as well. So I don't think it's as open-ended as some people might think. They are serious about doing something about it.
Sure, but I mean, to play devil's advocate for the other side, the government are never going to totally reduce immigration to the level that we want, really, because they can't, because they keep having to rely on importing more taxpayers in the country to keep paying for all the debt that we're in.
Yeah,
which I think is the
a
big issue.
Do you want to break that down a little bit more, actually?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the biggest problems I have is the fact that we have had so much government spending over the past few decades, like since the Second World War. We're in that much debt, and we keep relying on future taxpayers to keep paying it off. So now a system where it's people put into the system and say, oh, we'll put into this pot, but that pot's already been spent. So when it comes to people to retire, then the government needs to have funds to pay for that retirement. So because we have a low birth rate and birth rates are going down, we can't rely on people to future durations to keep putting it in that pot essentially. So keep having to import more immigrants to keep growing the population, keep growing the tax base.
But do you think it's that bad for a country to decline in population?
No, I don't know. It's not. It's fine. It's a natural thing to happen, and it shouldn't be a big deal. But the fact we're in so much debt and the way the economy works at the moment, people rely on that much, government spending. But we're in a situation where it can't happen.
Yeah.
Or if it does happen, it is a big deal.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm not like some of the hardcore people who say, we need to reduce net migration to zero. I think net migration should be reduced to the tens of thousands, as the Conservatives originally pledged to do under Theresa May, I think, or David Cameron.
Right.
I think tens of thousands is a good number because you're still having a good flow of skilled people. And that's helping the population, but it's a steady rate where you can actually integrate people quite evenly across the country and not cause problems. What do you think? What do you think of tens of thousands?
I don't like. I've not picked out a certain number that I think I'd be happy with. I'm more concerned about the people the quality of the people coming here.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, because if we cut the low skill migrants, which is fundamentally like the biggest issue we have, because they're flooding the market for the lowest, like people on the lowest incomes, and they're driving down wages. That's the big problem we have. When it comes to high skilled EU migrants, we don't really have much of an issue with them. But I do think a points based system, well certainly a reform points based system, that's gonna alleviate a lot of the problems that we have with immigration.
And I also find that a lot of the social issues we have to do with migration, when you talk about things like the grooming gangs and things like that, I think that the points-based system, because it's going to allow less low-skilled people, that's going to solve that in kind of a interesting way, because these problems we have with certain types of migration, they're usually at the low-skilled end of migration. People who are doctors don't tend to be doing, don't tend to be so socially perverse and do bad things. It tends to be the lower skilled people that tend to engage in lesser forms of behavior, shall I say?
Yeah, sure. We've looked at they call it the occupation of the people that actually committing all these crimes. Wasn't it's basically low skilled workers, working in fast food places and things like that.
Exactly, yeah.
It's people we don't really need here anyway.
No, we've got enough kebab places as it is, as far as I'm aware.
You're such a racist.
So yeah, I think the Australian points-based system will resolve a lot of those issues there. And also, I do think the numbers have to go down because
I think you are right.
Because at the moment we have almost 500,000 net migration a year, I think. Which
we're important.
No, wait, sorry. Let me get that right. Sorry, we have 500,000 immigration every year, and it's something like 250,000 net figure. I think that's the right figure there. But I think the biggest problem with the amount of immigration is, for me, house prices. You can't have affordable house prices if you continue to have that many people coming to the country.
Basic supply and demand. If you increase demand for it and you don't have an increase in supply, prices are going to go up. Simple as that.
Yeah, but what about the people who just say, you can't treat it like a business or something? It's not like that. It's more complicated. And
can't treat what like a business, like immigration system, or just the country?
Yeah, there's too many. It's not like a simple case of paying your credit card off or whatever. It's it's a very complicated system, and it doesn't work that you just reduce immigration and house prices go down.
Sure, but it's not going to have a significant effect, though. Well, not, if we're reducing the supply, if reducing the demand for housing, it's not going to have reduce the prices.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying this to be devil's advocate, really, because this is the main argument I get when I say this theory to other people, that if you reduce immigration, house prices will naturally go down, supply and demand, exactly what you said. And the only response I get is usually that vague response of, oh, yeah, but it's more complicated than that. And yet they never have an explanation as to why it's more complicated or why I'm wrong.
It's the classic vision of the United answer. It's like everything, if they can't, it's like, oh no, it's just really complicated. Like, okay, explain why it's more complicated. What are the extra variables I'm not accounting for?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, everything's a complicated system, but like, what is it? What's wrong with the argument? You can't just say it's complicated, and that's not an argument.
Yeah, exactly. Supply and demand. Okay, before we move on to our next topic, I'll just point out to the people watching now, please send us in any questions and I'll fire them off later. I wanted to talk briefly about socialism and,
great.
free market thinking and all this kind of thing. One of the things I think which differentiates the Conservative Party to what UKIP used to be is we're more protectionist in our economic way of thinking.
You mean UKIP?
UKIP, yeah.
Yeah.
So things like the Royal Mail, for instance, I think most kippers would support that being owned by the public, by the government. And also there are many in UKIP who think that things like water utilities wouldn't be too bad in government ownership as well. Why are these people wrong, Zach?
Okay, where to start? Should we start with Mail, I guess?
Well, let me insert something into that first, which is, I guess, the main argument for what I'm saying is that the Royal Mail, there's places in the countryside, for instance, where it costs a lot of money for the Royal Mail to deliver a letter to these people way out in the countryside, and so a private company would be less inclined to better serve these people, whilst the government would evenly distribute that to people in a fair way. So what would you say to something like that, for instance?
Is that true? I mean, like, don't we have private companies already that do that?
Well, let me give you another example, actually, because Gerard Batten mentioned this before, and he was talking about internet and getting internet lines and phone lines to people. And he said that his company, which was a spin-off of BT, I think it might have been OpenReach, they would be less inclined to deliver broadband internet and phone lines to the countryside because it's more expensive, when they could make loads more money doing it to people in the city. Whilst he would say, the government, if they were in charge, they would do it everywhere because their priority is to help everyone.
Okay, why should I pay for someone else's internet?
Good point. I guess maybe the reasoning is, why should you be punished for being in the countryside?
Well, it's not a punishment. It's like that's the reality. Like, it is more expensive to deliver, to deliver that service to people who are not in difficult areas to get to. That's always going to be the case. It's going to be the case with the government as well. That they still have to pay the costs, and if it is government controlled, the costs will be higher because no one's set up to reduce costs then.
Yeah. Well, to be fair to Boris Johnson, he has actually made some pledges to do with internet, which we're speaking about now. And he's saying he wants to roll broadband out to more different places. So I guess he's going to give funds to companies like BT to go to more places. So do you approve of that way of doing things?
No, not really.
No?
No.
So you're basically a hardcore capitalist, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, yes.
So
I don't see why we should be taking money from other people, other taxpayers or the businesses. They could be using for to purchase things themselves or to invest in to invest making their business better, serving their customers better, and then giving it to other places to say, oh, but this has to be done. This is more important. The government doesn't get to decide what's more important. People do that every single day with their own purchases.
Okay. So you would say to the person living in the middle of nowhere in the countryside, I'm sorry, you're going to have to pay a little bit more for your internet because it's harder to get to you. What are you going to do to support old farmer Jim, is what I'm saying.
What?
He's got his nice business in the countryside, farming, and he wants some internet so he can do some online accounting. I don't know.
Right. Pay for it, I guess. That's I'm trying to say, like, why do I have to pay for Farmer Jim's internet? I don't.
Well, because Farmer Jim's Farmer Jim wants to go on Facebook, and you're denying him that.
You can go on Facebook. I mean, the wonder of the modern world is, we've got phones, we've got all kinds of different internet access. It's still possible for him to get internet access. It's not like,
I guess there is the argument that technology is improving so rapidly anyway, thanks to private enterprise, that issues like that will become less of a problem in the future anyway, right?
Of course. I mean, it's still a market. I mean, if you're a business, you still want to expand your market into other areas.
Yeah. See, I definitely agree with you in the fact that a capitalist society produces wealth, because private enterprise is what produces the most wealth, for sure.
Wealth is made of goods and services, and if what creates government services is private enterprise. That's what creates wealth.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess, okay, probably the main one for me is the railways. And I think someone mentioned this on the comments, actually, that for me, railways, the price of a ticket these days is so expensive. And I find, our railways are part owned by the German and French government, I think. And It's like, if we could just have that owned by the government, like what happened with, I think, the West Coast Rail, we'd have the same service, but it'd be less expensive. That's my gut feeling.
How would it be less expensive?
Because the government wouldn't be trying to cream so much profits off of us.
So you're not talking about cost. You're talking about what what people have to pay.
Yeah.
Well then, but are you including their price? The cost of taxation to that?
Well, yeah, I am, because I think that the government would make a profit out of the railways. I wouldn't tax people for, obviously I don't think you'd need tax money from the whole country, because I think the people buying the tickets would be enough to run the train service by itself easily.
So, okay. So if you're going to reduce price on tickets, because that's your argument essentially.
Yeah.
Like you reduce price on tickets, how is that then going to cover the costs that are being covered now?
Because I think that the money which is being used for profits for the train companies would instead go into better services for the train.
It already is. That's what businesses work. They always have a budget, and that they keep reinvesting the profits that they make into to keep being competitive. The problem you have now with the train system is the fact you've got different monopolies and different lines. The solution of that is to open up to more competition, not to create one whole big government monopoly.
Well, exactly. That's the main crunch point for me, actually, is I understand with, most small businesses and things like that, how it's not the same because people have a choice. But something like the railways, you can't choose which company to get to London on, can you? You have to choose one. That's the problem. Sure.
But then surely the argument should then be like, you open up to more competition then.
So we're going to do 2 trains to London.
Well, we got different trains run different lines, and
yeah,
it does work.
Well,
I mean, it has worked. I mean, some on some lines, I don't know about and some lines, that happens, doesn't it?
In fact, you went to London recently, didn't you? I saw you posted about this. Tell me how much your ticket from Leeds to London cost.
I don't know. It was. I did quite a few journeys. Overall, it cost me about, I don't know, it was 100 something or something. I don't know.
100 something.
In total, so yeah, it might be about 80, 90, something like that. Leeds to London.
Are you not selling porky pies there? 80 or 90 quid, are you saying?
It's around that figure. I can double check you right now.
But my main point is that I've been to Italy and France and places like that, and their train systems are so cheaper than over here, I find. Anyway, I'm going on a bit of a tangent there, but introduce more competition. That's basically the way to improve the economy. That's your main point.
Yeah, the ticket costs £79.50. So yeah, £80.
Okay, that's not actually too bad. I thought it'd be a lot worse than that. So I I remember taking a train from London to Brighton. It cost me like 30 quid. I'm like, what? That's not that far.
Right. But I guess it's the same argument. Why should I have to pay for your train ticket? If I never get, if say I'm a person who never gets the train, I drive everywhere. Why do I have to pay for someone else's ticket?
Well, the people that would be helping to pay would be other train users. I wouldn't tax people who never use the train to pay for my train ticket.
Right. I still understand how the fact, if we're getting less profit because we're making less money on trains, then somehow that means we can still keep running a better service.
Well, I just think that too much of anyway, I won't go on about this for too much longer because this is too esoteric of an argument.
Sure, yeah.
But I just feel like businesses, their main priority is to make profit, right? And so naturally, you're going to get the train companies are going to want to earn a good profit from train commuters. And if they're doing that, then that's to the negative of the consumer in some ways, because not every train company is going to produce the best service because they do want profit at the same time.
Well, fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with making a profit, because to make a profit, you need to be the most competitive business. You need to provide the best goods and services at the most competitive price. And that's what maximizes profits. Like the ones that maximize profits are the ones providing the best value to customers.
Yeah. Okay. So, but that's what I'd say then. I'd say in places where there's more competition, that should definitely stay private because that's going to generate wealth. But it's these places where there's very limited competition or none at all. That's where I feel like there needs to be improvement there. And I think the trains definitely need reforming in some way.
I don't know. I don't use trains that often, so I'm not really had much of a bad experience, to be honest.
Well, the trains are very important, Zach. So we need to take them into consideration.
Sure.
Although I will say one last comment on that, actually, because I heard Jacob Rees-Mogg talking about that ages ago. And I think he said one of the main problems is that the company which builds the tracks is actually different to the company which runs the trains. And so they have to negotiate deals with each other all the time. And apparently that's a bit of an issue there as well. But,
yeah, isn't the one that basically owns or builds the tracks? Isn't that basically a monopoly, like the government-backed monopoly or something? I might be wrong.
You might be right there, actually. Yeah, so that's probably an issue there as well. And I think a similar thing happened with BT, because BT used to be owned by the public, and then it split off with Openreach and companies like that. And so BT kind of had a monopoly because of they basically controlled who gets to install internet where. I think that's how it worked.
Right.
But, yeah. Anyway. So what would you sum up basically as being what you see as conservatism, or your idea of conservatism, and relate that to the Conservative Party as well?
That's interesting, because conservatism means like different things to different people. I mean, what Conservative Party fundamentally is now, it's more about it's a free enterprise party, and I can't really call it, to be honest, I can't really call it a social conservative party, because they haven't really been social conservatives for a long time now.
Yeah,
so it is more aligned to like maybe a classical liberal party, or like maybe the typical centre right party.
But I don't think classical liberalism is actually. I don't think that actually works against social conservatism. I think the two are more closely aligned than you think.
Yeah, I do think they're quite compatible, for sure. Like, you can still be a social conservative while being an economic liberal.
Yeah, and supporting free speech and all this kind of thing. And Ronald Reagan's probably a good example. I think he described himself in an interview saying, "I'm a conservative and a libertarian," and that for him, libertarianism was very much a part of conservatism.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I align, really. Kind of like along that kind of like Reagan, Thatcher kind of a sector, really.
Yeah, well, that's where I would describe myself, because I'm very much a libertarian when it comes to, freedom of speech.
But not
And,
trains.
Huh?
But not trains.
Not trains, no. No, I'm a libertarian when it comes to freedom of speech and rights and things like that. And I think America is, they're so lucky having the Constitution and the amendments. But I'm very much a conservative when it comes to immigration and culture as well. I think that British culture should be thought about when we think of government policy. And so I don't see any contradiction really between those two ideologies, really.
Yeah, sure. I agree with that.
Yeah. So obviously I started this movement, Purple Tories. In fact, I shouldn't call it a movement. That sounds way too like I'm trying to start a momentum or something. But my main thing was I really liked what Boris was doing, and this movement in the Conservative Party of what I believe is becoming more socially conservative and more with the things I agree with. I've had some resistance from kippers who are, a bit cynical, and the Conservative Party will never change. They'll always support mass migration and hate speech laws and things like that. But I do think that's changing. What do you think of this movement, and do you think it has legs, so to speak?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about why you kind of left UKIP. What was your reasoning for that?
Well, first and fundamentally, UKIP imploded as a party. I won't get into the nitty gritty of it because we already did that in the last stream with Richard Brain.
Right, okay.
Basically, we had a chairman called Kirsten Herriot who basically didn't allow one of the main people to stand for leadership, which was Gerard Batten, which was the person that the majority of UKIP has backed.
Yeah.
And she just caused so much trouble, banning people, suspending people, including me. And the party just couldn't move on from that. And for me, UKIP it very much relied on Gerard Batten as a character, because he really gave strength to the members. And it was like what Nigel Farage used to be for us before he left the party. And so without him, the party sort of went adrift, I think.
Wasn't happening before that though? Because when Gerard Batten was leader, what didn't they they lost all their seats in the European election? The polling went through the floor.
Well, yeah, that's right. And I put that almost entirely down to Nigel Farage leaving the party, because Nigel Farage is such a huge figure. And I have so much admiration for him, because it's amazing how he's done that without even becoming an MP. He's managed to
he's achieved so much. It is incredible.
Yeah. So I put UKIP's demise, like you say, firstly down to Farage's exit, because so many of Farage's followers just went out of UKIP because of Farage, and also down to the corrupt chairman as well. But this is the thing: a lot of people in UKIP were really downhearted about that. But then I saw Boris come along and do all these things which were very UKIP-like, I think. And it just gave me so much hope. And I thought, actually, this isn't a time to be down. This is a time to be energized, because we've got someone in Parliament, in government, who's actually supporting the things we believe in.
I mean, we've got a prime minister who's basically doing, a lot of things that we want. He's filled the cabinet with people that, we can all pretty much support. At the moment, we're kind of winning, really.
Yeah, we're winning big time, as Trump would say. I mean, I always loved Trump from the beginning. For me, he is the epitome of everything I want. Not everything, actually, because he has done some things which are a little bit questionable. But as far as the whole movement goes around populist nationalism and, just implementing the will of the people for once, Trump
is the things Trump done I disagree with, but in general, I mean, the first Republican debate I called it, I was like, this guy's gonna be president. I was like, when no one was saying Trump could win.
Yeah.
He was the guy for the job straight away.
Yeah, and he actually came across like a real person, unlike all these manufactured people before him. And I remember everyone was saying conservative all the time, like this guy's a conservative. And these people in the Republicans, like was it Mitt Romney and people like that, they are cucks. They're not proper they're not proper conservatives whatsoever. And so for someone like Trump to come along, Trump isn't, you know, the exact image of a conservative you would, if you were going to say bring up an image of a conservative, you wouldn't think of Trump.
No, not at all.
But he does deliver on what conservatives want, and that alone is enough.
Mm-hmm. I think in America, like a lot of people who were against Trump initially have now kind of like come around to him because he's actually doing the things that he promised to do. He's actually being more conservative.
Yeah, he's building the wall. He's reducing immigration, and he's. Oh, actually, that's an interesting thing to touch because I know we disagreed on this in the past, and I won't go too heavily into it. Where I do agree with Trump on is his policy on China. I don't want Chinese companies, you know, flooding our market with cheap steel and things like that. So that's another thing which we pretty much talked about before, where I go with the Trump line on that one. You obviously don't.
No, I disagree. I think when you implement tariffs, it just you can save jobs with the steel industry because you put tariffs on Chinese steel. When it comes to actually American companies that are actually using steel as raw materials, their price have to go up, and they have to make job cuts because of it. So I think there's some study basically that found out you ended up having to make more job losses in total because of the tariffs rather than just accepting the steel at the low prices, delivering those low prices to your customers. And
is that job losses in your country or in both countries?
So the country that implements the tariffs.
The country that implements the tariffs.
Yeah, because then if they have to then pay a higher price for the steel. Either that's due to buying American steel, which is at a higher price, or the Chinese steel, which is now at a higher price. They then have to increase their price to production, which then that's either passed on to the customers or end up having to cut costs in other ways, like reducing heads.
Yeah, so less building gets done, less builders get employed, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I haven't totally made my mind up on these issues. Where is, I know you told me you read economic books on this. Who is the main go-to guy when it comes to this sort of thinking for you?
There's a lot of guys, but I think what started me off, I read Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. It's not as dry as it sounds. It was actually, it's pretty well written. It was no graphs, it's dead easy to understand. I think that's probably the first place to go to. Yeah.
Okay. I'd have to really, because I'm not an expert by any stretch, especially when it comes to economics. So I would definitely like to explore what you're saying there, because I do actually understand what you're saying. And do you think there's certain industries where you should be able to safeguard them at all, or do you think it should be totally free?
I just think it should be totally free. Just compete. If you're a business that it's a good business that provides quality to your customers, then you'll be able to make a profit. If not, then why does it need to exist?
Yeah.
Because you're a customer, why do you want to pay a higher price for less low quality goods when you could just import from somewhere else or wherever? Because fundamentally, isn't about finding people with the best goods and services at the lowest price.
Yeah. So you get quite a bit of following on social media.
Recently, I'm not sure why.
Yeah, and how did that come about?
I don't know. I ended up posting about just my thoughts or whatever, just various ramblings or whatever, for several years now. And I used to get tons of arguments with the leftists and feminists. And I really enjoyed that.
Where are the arguments taking place? On forums and different Facebook groups?
Yeah, all over the place. But I used to, because I'm a musician. Well, I was a musician, and I knew a lot of people in the music business, and a lot of them are kind of leftists. And so when I started talking about my politics, it was like I got a lot of heat.
Right.
Which I found it's quite fun.
Yeah.
So I just like the debate. And since then, what leftists are like. They ended up, unfriending me or blocking me, or
Hmm.
the typical response to an opinion they don't like.
So,
And I
so
guess just
why did you stick with your arguments and go, you know what, I don't care what they say, I'm right. What had you been watching that made you just know that you were fighting a good cause there?
I don't know. I always just thought like truth. It's better to tell the truth than be popular.
Yeah.
Like,
So did you have an inspiration, whether it be Farage or someone like that at the time?
not particularly. I mean, like, it's just, I guess when you learn more, things. Like, I got into economics, I got into, conservatism or whatever. Then, like, I feel like I've been lied to, like, for most of my life. Going to school, and being taught all these different things, and you probably find a similar experience like growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then just from there, just like I thought, I've got to say something because more people need to hear this.
Yeah.
And just from that, you get into a lot of arguments, and then eventually people started like finding me, and I guess they kind of liked what I was saying, and then that's that really. And then a big thing happened to me toward it was the European elections. I think I got a lot of Brexit, a lot of people from the Brexit party, and a lot of like conservatives. They started following me, and
And
so
why are these just random people who add you on Facebook?
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's funny that because as soon as I started getting involved with UKIP, randomly people would add me, and I'm like, I don't know these people, but they seem to like my stuff and comment and things like that.
But it's a cool little community because we kind of all, we connect with each other like in that way because we share similar beliefs and similar values. And I think that like I met you in a group at some point.
Yeah, I don't know how I came across you, to be honest. I don't know if
No,
I
I know,
added you or you added me. I don't even know. I can't
I
remember.
know, I know. I get so many different friend requests and so many different people I interact with. It's difficult to keep track.
Yeah, but I feel like maybe because I truly believe that most people in this country are conservative in terms of values, but
Yeah,
I think that there's not a lot of people, young people especially, that really speak out loudly about these things, proudly and just
yeah.
really rail off about it also in a smart and clever way as well. So
There's a lot
there's
to lose. There's a lot
there's
to lose by doing
definitely
that. I mean, like I definitely lost a lot of stuff, a lot of friends, and just people just don't want to like get in contact with me anymore, just because I'm a young person and I've got more right wing beliefs.
yeah. I
Whereas
mean, in
a
me
lot of young people.
in media and the music industry, you've got it double fold as well.
Yeah, not so much anymore. I work as accountant now, so I'm a bit more
Really?
yeah, I'm a bit more traditional, like right wing. I'm more
Well,
stereotype these days.
I studied film production and I worked as a camera assistant for a while, and then I
Right.
moved into being an electrician, and I found that pretty liberating because electricians are pretty right wing and conservative in
Yeah,
general,
yeah.
whilst
It's just,
with the
it's just
media.
like it's like that working class kind of sun readers, I assume.
So, what about the people you work with who are accountants? How do they feel about that kind of issue, Brexit and everything?
Um, a lot of them are kind of Remainers, really. Which yeah, I
Okay,
did.
do you know why that is, Zach?
Go on, explain to me.
Middle class. Okay, I don't care what criticism I get for this. If you're middle class, you're way more likely to support Remain. I think that's just basic fact.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some truth to that.
And do you know why I think the reason behind that is I think if you've had a privileged upbringing and you haven't experienced sort of the harshness of reality so much,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you understand how things affect you as well. And
Sure.
so, if you're brought up somewhere like St. Albans, where my good friend Jake lives,
Right.
you're not used to hardship. Whilst I think if you're brought up in somewhere like a working class place, like Luton, like where Tommy
Sure.
Robinson's from, you're going to have a lot more issues.
Absolutely. I mean, like these people who are middle class, they're not having the same problem that working class have with immigration, because
Mm,
like immigration's having a more significant effect on the wage stagnation on the working class rather than the middle class.
Yeah, immigration to a lot of middle class people is just having lots of nice different restaurants. That's what
exactly
means to them.
Mm-hmm.
Whilst the working class people, you can be in a situation like Luton and have extremists on your door.
Yeah. And again, it's a virtue signal as well. It's people just saying, "Oh, I am for immigration. I'm what a good person I am."
Yeah, there's not a real deep thinking behind it, for sure. Yeah, I do. There definitely is a class dimension to Brexit. I think. I think that's undeniable.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But what I find quite interesting actually is I think that the people who actually have things in common with the working class in terms of Brexit and things like that, funnily enough, is actually the upper class.
Yes.
And that actually sounds quite strange, but it is actually true. And I think that's because the upper class are more rooted in traditional values.
I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg's the spokesperson for the working man these days.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Jacob Rees-Mogg is the working class hero these days.
But what time to be alive?
Yeah, and I think that's because the upper class still have a sense of traditional values, and they were brought up in more of a hierarchy, I guess. And they had to discipline. Like I spoke to Richard Brain about this actually, because he went to Eton and Oxford, and in fact, Sargon of Akkad. I don't know if you follow him as well.
Yeah, I used to.
Yeah, he said something about this on my stream, and he said to really be a good politician, you need to kind of have I always forget how he phrased this, sort of like a psychological punch in the face, or you have to have experienced some kind of hardship. And in Eton and Oxford, they are put through the mills in terms of discipline and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably rubbed off on people like Boris Johnson, where they've really had to work hard to achieve what they've achieved. Whilst, if you're from a very privileged background and it's been very easy for you, you go to college, you graduate from university, you become an accountant. There has been work there to get to that position, but it's not been nearly as difficult than for other people.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we're in total agreement there. That's good.
Yeah, total agreement. It's like these people, they don't seem to be able to handle conflict that well.
Yeah.
I mean, you challenge them everything, they kind of just like fall apart. I mean, it's quite, it's got to do with all this political correctness thing and the social justice rubbish. So just,
So where do you think the Conservative Party goes from here? And, have you been to a Conservative conference before?
No, honestly, I haven't. I was going to go last time, but I was busy with engagements, so I couldn't make it.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely be going to the next Conservative conference, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I hope once that conference happens, obviously, I hope Brexit is done by then.
Brexit we're done for a while. We've got the next phase of negotiations yet, and it's still going to keep talking about it. Hopefully, by the next election, it'll be done.
Yeah, and exactly. And Boris said he wants to conclude the withdrawal agreement, the exit negotiations by 2020 as well.
Good luck to him.
That's the transition period, I should point out, not the actual deal.
Didn't did like it's like an informal deal with Farage where he said he wouldn't extend the transition period beyond the end of 2020 and they go for a free trade agreement with the EU.
Yes, in fact, that's something which I didn't mention, which I did actually want to mention, is what Farage did with saying he wouldn't stand in the seats. That's because he said that he was happy that Boris Johnson said that he wouldn't, that they would finish the withdrawal process by 2020 and that they would go for a Canada-style trade agreement. And so if Farage is saying what Boris is doing is good for Brexit, that's saying something clearly.
Of course. I mean, you can say it's not perfect. I mean, that's Farage's argument, position. But I mean, that's exactly what I want, really. I want to kind of have a free trade agreement with the EU and nothing else.
Yeah.
So we're kind of, because we're back in Boris, that's kind of what we're getting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the future is bright, I think.
Certainly brighter now.
Well, my hope is anyway. We currently have a lot of people in the Brexit party, and well, some people left in UKIP, not many. My hope is that we're going to see more of these types of people move over to the Conservative Party, and
Well, it's happening.
It's happening. Sure.
If you look at the polls now, you can see that the Conservative support has pretty much like fluctuated the same way like the Brexit Party has. I mean, if you look at the Brexit Party goes down, the Conservatives go up. Right now, the Brexit Party have been falling quite steadily in the polls, where the Conservatives have been gaining. So that's like clearly what's happening is people are making the calculation. It's better to support the Conservatives rather than the Brexit Party because they're the ones that can actually deliver Brexit.
Yeah, and I think they probably saw what Farage said in terms of saying what Boris is doing is actually a good thing. And he sort of, in a way, admitted that we shouldn't split the Brexit vote and that, in a way, it's best to vote Tory in a lot of places. And for him to say that is definitely a big thing.
I think that's the way a lot of people have interpreted, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's definitely helping out Boris, there's no denying that.
So anyway, to continue my little thing I was going to say, I would love to see at the next Conservative conference, a lot of these people having moved to the Conservative Party and to really see sort of like a more youthful energy of people coming through the Conservative ranks, because I think there's a lot of potential there.
There is, but it's always going to be the case you get more young people going to swing more left, and the older people they get jobs and then in the real world they become more right wing over time. So it's always going to be like more old people going to these conferences. But yeah, the more younger people there, like surely it's the better really.
That is true, but I think what Trump is doing in America is actually energizing a lot of younger people for sure, and getting them to be more active in conservative associations to do with the Republicans in colleges and things there. And we might as well mention Turning Point briefly. Like, I do find Turning Point a little bit cringy on certain videos and things like that, but I do think the movement broadly isn't that bad of a thing, and it is actually turning the wave a little bit in the culture war as well.
Sure.
So yeah, I want to go to the next Conservative conference. I want to see all my beautiful Conservative right-wing friends there, and I want to see a real movement brewing, because I think the place to do this is the Conservative Party. It's the most logical place to go in terms of actually achieving things.
We had a lot of young people going to UKIP, so I just wonder why UKIP over the Conservatives. Why would people choose that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Now that we have Boris Johnson as Conservative leader and as Prime Minister, this is the time to do it, because
of course
we've essentially got the keys to the castle now. That's how I would describe it.
Exactly. What more do people want?
Yeah.
Because we're not going to get the perfect government, we're not going to get the perfect cabinet, but I mean, this is pretty close.
Yeah.
As close as we're going to get anyway.
I'm actually getting more comments here backing you when it comes to your argument for capitalism. So I'm actually slightly surprised by that, because I thought more people were on my side when it comes to nationalising the trains.
Oh, fantastic. What people saying?
I have got one comment here from Gully Gullible saying free trains now. I don't know whether to take that as a compliment or not.
Communist swine.
Okay. Well, that was a good discussion. Is there anything you want to mention before we close this?
Okay, December 13th, what's going to
happen? I think we'll get the withdrawal agreement. Sorry. I think the Conservatives will get a majority. It won't be a massive majority, but it'll be a comfortable majority.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Brexit Party will maybe get 2 or 3 seats at most. I honestly believe that. I don't think they're going to do as well as they think they are.
No, I was surprised if we got 1 seat, to be honest.
Yeah, I'll be surprised as well, actually. And I think as soon as the Conservatives get into government, they'll put forward the withdrawal agreement, pass through Parliament, and then we could move on. That's what I honestly think is going to happen. What about you?
At last, after 3 years, we can finally move on. Yeah, I think it's about right. I'm not. The polls looking really good at the moment. Obviously, the polls are not, they're not 100% accurate. but like they do certainly show a trend. And a lot of people I spoke to, I don't know many people actually going to vote Labour. I've been to places where there's like a lot of Labour signs up, but I haven't talked to anyone that says like enthusiastic about voting Labour.
Yeah, well, the average person on the street, from what I can see, is just they don't like Jeremy Corbyn. He's not the leader for them.
No, I think it was YouGov I was looking at the other day, and it was just like how did rate Boris Johnson versus how they rate Corbyn. It's like how prime ministerial they were and how trustworthy and everything. And like Boris beat him in like every single category, like by a clear mile.
Yeah. But I did actually watch the debate between Corbyn and Johnson on ITV, actually an hour before the stream.
Right. What do you think?
I thought Boris did really well. I thought he was outstanding against Corbyn. But Corbyn didn't come across as, inept or anything. He did come across as quite articulate. It's just everything he was saying is total rubbish, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think either had a particularly good performance. I don't think anyone had a particularly bad performance. I think they both had like good moments.
But
I think.
Go on, carry on.
Yeah, I kind of like Boris's like response when Corbyn kind of he got his paper up and said you're going to sell off the NHS, which is pretty much all the argument he's got to go from at this point. And he holds that up, and it's supposed to be like this big moment to kind of wound Boris, and they just like Boris totally like just turned it around. It's like just saying no, it's total fiction, and then just brought it back to Brexit. And that was a really good moment, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I also like the what would you give as a Christmas present, and he said, "Oh, the withdrawal agreement." Yeah, but also I did find is it Julie Etchingham? She interrupted Boris so much during that.
Did you see the debate last night?
The one I watched is the ITV one with Julie
Etchingham. Yeah.
Was that last night?
No, that was the one. Was it earlier this week?
The previous one.
Yeah, it was a few years earlier.
So what was the debate last night like?
It was like the whole question time, like
that's right.
Yeah, I think Boris got like a really hard time with that. He had the audience, like a lot of leftist audience against him because it's the BBC. He had the moderator constantly interrupt him. I don't think he finished it. I don't think he managed to finish like a single point without being interrupted by someone. But I think despite everything, he came off pretty well, I thought.
Yeah. Did you read that apparently one of the people that asked the questions on that was an actor in I, Daniel Blake, which is basically a socialist film?
Oh yeah, I saw that. I've seen half of it, and then I saw half the film. And it was like, okay, it's just total socialist rubbish.
Yeah,
I kind of gave up on it.
Well, it's made by a famous director. His name slips my mind now, but he's very much a Labour supporter. He's a good film director, but he made Elephant Man.
Right.
But as far as his politics goes, atrocious.
No.
Although I actually heard on a YouGov poll, I can't remember if it's the Julie Etchingham debate or the question time one, that apparently the majority of undecided voters thought Corbyn did better. I guess it was the ITV one, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it was the ITV one.
But I'm quite surprised at that, because I wouldn't have thought that to be true. I don't know if they took a small sample and how that occurred.
Well, did you see the poll they did on Twitter? It was like 78% said Corbyn won the debate. So like, yeah, it's Twitter.
Well, yeah, Twitter more like.
I saw a lot of like Labour supporters like by this Twitter poll, Jeremy Corbyn won the debate, and it's like not really. I mean, if you look at the YouGov, I think it was YouGov did it, and it was like pretty much neck and neck. It was like 51-49 to Boris.
Yeah. I don't think many people who are going to vote are actually watching these debates anyway, to be honest. I know people like my stepdad, who's quite working class. He certainly doesn't watch any of that crap. That's how we would describe it anyway. I
don't think it's having a big effect on the electorate, actually. I don't think it's going to have that much of a difference. I mean, like, I look at polls all the time. I like statistics and data. So I've just, since that debate happened, all I've seen is like Labour have continued to climb a little bit, like like they were beforehand. And Conservatives are still making gains. We're now on like 42%, I think.
Yeah,
so we're at least 10 points above Labour. So I'm pretty comfortable.
Yeah, I think the contending party always tends to climb a bit by the virtue of being in opposition of them.
Yeah.
But I think Boris actually pulled out of another debate, which was supposed to be coming up in a few weeks or so. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think that's probably down to the fact that he's realised it's pretty pointless. It's not many people are really that interested. I don't think you don't need more than 1 or 2 debates anyway, in my opinion.
Sure. It's gonna be the same thing again, just like repeating sound bites. It's just I don't think anyone learns anything from the debates.
And the media are just trying to use it as an opportunity to slam Boris at the end of the day, aren't they?
Yeah. It's like every election, it's the same thing. It happened with Cameron, it happened with Theresa May, it happened with Boris Johnson. They get on these debates and people just like start shouting abuse at them.
Yeah, and honestly, that Julie Etchingham debate and the question at the end, what's Christmas present would you give to the other leader? I just found it so cringy. Just leave.
Yeah. Like, that's the important issue of the day, surely.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I want to see a bright, positive future in the Conservative Party. I believe we can do it, Zack. Do you believe?
Yeah, why not?
We'll scream with pride about it then.
Nah, it's not my style. Sorry.
Okay, well, I think we'll cut that off there. If you're watching this stream and you're not a member of my little group, Purple Tories, feel free to join. It's basically a network for ex-kippers and like-minded Conservatives. And yeah, I think we'll leave that there. So thanks for talking with me.
All right, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, see you later.
Cheers.